In at 10, Into the Pit. This is crazy, okay? I will admit, and it is 100% not what's going to happen, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book, Into the Pit. Remember where Oswald jumps into a ball pit and then somehow leaves his year, which I predicted was 2011 in a previous video, and then appears in 1985 to witness 5 children getting killed? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason, I think. And where do we see the first ball pit that isn't in a simulated pizzeria meant to just attract animatronics and not really kids? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying, alright, the time travel is already established and technically canon in the FNAF multiverse. And considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future. There are 2 moments that in my head really solidify this as a possibility, albeit a wild possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. I mean, like the therapist disc where the therapist calls client 46 out about the lies about their home life, and then the fact that when Gregory leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. Okay, the therapist in one of the tapes says that 46, which I'm still at this point at least kind of thinking is Gregory, had a great home life, but they told their previous therapist that they had a horrible one. But if that is the case and they have a great home life, how is that the case if he's sleeping in a cardboard box? Maybe because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened when the game takes place. It happens in the future, which could mean that this girl that we play as could be Gregory's sister who came to save him when he didn't actually come back to their time. It's nuts, but it's possible. Anything is possible with FNAF at this point. In at 9, Friends. Now a theory about our little blonde girl in the middle of the poster, alright? Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention how she looked an awful lot like the silhouette of the 9 children who have gone missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that. So, in my mind, the most realistic answer is that the missing children aren't actually dead. Or at least this time they aren't. That they were instead trapped inside the building somewhere, much like how Vanny in the first trailer says that, Gregory, your friends are here with me, or something like that.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory, at least originally, knew these missing children, which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, it's a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who is also one of Gregory's friends. That, thanks to the collapse, managed to escape whatever prison she was stuck in. And it ain't Save Him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the Ruins poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on that one screen, at least to me, indicates that we might have to save Gregory from whatever situation he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make his way onto the hill that he sits in after the true ending and the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene we see just happens before and then he comes back, although I wouldn't see why he would come back. It's also possible that that's just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. But, I mean, it could just be because the true ending is canon and that's why it's realistic, but you know what? Nothing is clear with FNAF. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful for saving Gregory, but it is possible that we will die in the process. And you know what? Here's hoping. I don't want more children to keep track of. And at 7, Save Us. What if we're the ones who need help this time around? I mean, we have no idea who this person is and what they're doing, but maybe they're not one of the missing kids and they just also got trapped somehow as well. I mean, it's a question of how they would have gotten in, of course, and like, why are they exploring this place if it's destroyed and they're the size of a 4-year-old as well? But like, still, no idea why she could be in the Pizzaplex, but my job isn't to theorize about why, but about what. This plot may end up being that we have to help Gregory save us so that he can show us the way out. Or the game is just going to be replayed as a new character with Gregory as our guardian telling us how to get around and get out of the Pizzaplex, which might satisfy those of you who wanted the Choose Your Guardian DLC. I said it wasn't going to happen. It just didn't make sense to do, since like it would just be the same game again, but slightly different. And I was right. And at 6, Bonnie's released. And while we may not be choosing our guardian, it's definitely possible that in this whole mess, Bonnie was released from whatever prison he was being held in. Or at least something like that could be possible. I mean, there are plenty of doors that we can only get behind if we had level 10 security clearance, which is impossible within the game. So those doors could have been opened or have just been destroyed in the collapse, which could explain how we get into these sections now that we probably aren't going around trying to collect security badges, if there are any even left remaining. But a security door level 10 would make much more sense since we have no idea what could be behind any of those doors. Maybe they kept Bonnie in some stasis chamber since he's a sentient AI that couldn't really be moved or something. I don't know, okay? It's FNAF. They'll come up with a scenario and a reason, and we won't really be able to fight it. That's just how it goes. Halfway through into number 5, Antagonist. We've played as the antagonist before, however the player we were was only an antagonist in the next game, not in the game that we were playing, meaning that this time we could be playing as an actual antagonist. I mean, Chica being in the poster either means that there is a connection or we're just being messed with, and recently I think we're always being messed with, so I'm gonna go with that, meaning that this little girl could possibly be Vanny. I mean, we know that Vanny does have a spirit within the building as we see in the rooftop ending, but could we actually be playing as her child spirit? I mean, it's possible. It wouldn't be the wildest thing that FNAF has ever done. Additionally, I mean, we could be the spirit found in Princess Quest because, like, come on, would that really be out of the question? At this point, I'm pretty sure Princess Quest is destroyed, so maybe it released something. It's not out of the question. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Okay, there's a difference there. It would explain why she's in black and white unless there's, like, light on her. So, in at 4, Chica's Revenge. Chica being on the poster though is not necessarily just for a distraction. It could be that it is meant to indicate that Chica is the reason all of this is happening. And honestly, after Niagara Falls Comic Con, I wouldn't put it past Chica. That's right, I'm still mad about it. I mean, after all this, it could be some form of twisted revenge for Gregory dismantling her in an attempt to escape originally. So could this girl be a manifestation of Susie as an attempt to gain our trust and inevitably kill us? Or at least try to, at the very least, because, like, I mean, to be fair, if we think about it, we aren't going to kill Gregory or get Gregory killed, since after all he does still need to make it up to the hill at the end of the Afton ending. So unless that happens and then he comes back, which seems unlikely given the help me text on the monitor and the fact that he just swore he would never do that, I feel like this is kind of possible. So could this all just be a manifestation trying to gain our trust? Probably not, but the more Chica, the happier I am. Usually. Getting close to the end of number 3, Client 46. Could this new blonde girl actually be Client 46? The mysterious therapy client who never speaks, but we all thought was Gregory, or at least some of us, most of us thought was Gregory. I mean, honestly, it could make a lot of sense. It would explain why 46 would be talking to Vanny despite Gregory being afraid of Vanessa. It would explain how they could hack the animatronics but not be able to stop them by hacking them again like Gregory could have. It would explain how their home life was great despite their accounts of the past, since after all, Gregory does end up sleeping in a cardboard box. And it makes a lot more sense than he's a time traveler and the tragedy just hasn't happened yet. It would also explain why we never hear 46 talk, because it's a girl, and it would just make us think that it's Vanny or Vanessa instead of it being someone we hadn't seen before. Client 46 was a kid, as evidenced by multiple recordings, and they would be immune to the deaths of her therapist if she was talking to Vanny, but who could this mysterious girl be? But ultimately, in at number 2, Ghost. While yes, this girl could be 46, it's also possible that she is Elizabeth Afton, either as a ghost, which if she is 46 wouldn't really make sense, or she could be possessed by Elizabeth Afton's spirit. If we take a look at the blob, which does include Circus Baby, her eyes aren't lit anymore, meaning that the spirit is no longer in there. And considering how Afton's body still somehow survived, and we think that Michael Mann should make his way into Glamrock Freddy, it would make sense that Elizabeth's spirit would survive as well, especially if she wanted to stick around to keep trying to impress dear old dad. Since in a previous video we came to the conclusion that Remnant can only be burned away if the spirit wants to be set free, or rather the burning doesn't really do anything and they're only released if they get their unfinished business completed, like the original Missing Children in the Happiest Day minigame, getting that party. Elizabeth could be sent to gain Gregory's trust and then defeat him like she did in Sister Location, or maybe she's there to find her brother. And finally, in at number 1, Great Escape. The final potential plot would be a great escape story, where this blonde girl has come to the rescue of Gregory or has been released because she was trapped, and now she has to make a break for it while the building collapses around her. Will she save Gregory or will she only save herself? Multiple endings are not out of the question and kind of expected at this point, with one of them, the most difficult seemingly being the true ending. But who knows? Maybe none of these are right and we're all reading into this idea way too much. And our expectations are just going to ruin this DLC for us. That's right, I made the joke. You thought I was done making cringy jokes and puns. Hell to the no. I will always try and make terrible messages and jokes because that's just what I do. No matter where I am, terrible, unrelated, possibly offensive jokes are always being made. And it tends save him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the ruin poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on the screen, at least to me, indicates that what we will have to do is save Gregory from whatever situation that he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make it to that hill that he sits on in the true ending, in the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene in this case is just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. That could also just be because it's the true ending and it's canon, but it's currently unclear. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful, but it's possible that our character, whoever she is, will die in the process. I could also be drawing weird connections between things that aren't really linked, but that's always possible when theory crafting, at literally any point, so... And at 9, Robot Gregory. This poster, in my eyes, also helps prove further that Gregory is in fact a robot, since after all we get confirmation that Vanny messes up the cameras, as you can see from the two screens that have Vanny on them. They're both glitching out. This is further supported by our last point, because how would Gregory be able to add a help me sign to a screen without being able to access the cameras? Nowhere on our Fazwatch does it say that we can add text, and Freddy clearly doesn't have the ability since he would have used it during the section where we have to open the doors for him so that we can then be a sussy baka and vent, instead of just, you know, standing there and waving. He could have had text flashing up on screen so that we can see him easily. Multiple people I watched play this had difficulty with this section, okay? Freddy just flashing some text on screen saying I'm here, especially when the player takes a while, would have established that he had this power, but they didn't. So unless they want to somehow retcon that in, it has to be that Gregory's controlling it. Most likely because he's a robot and he can just, like, tap into the cameras. And at 8, no more Freddy. There is also a possibility that Freddy is destroyed, or that he won't be in this DLC at all thanks to the statue we see on the poster. This poster could be an indication of what happened to Freddy after the Pizzaplex's collapse. I mean, after all, the collapse did destroy Chica, right? So why couldn't it have destroyed Freddy too? Yes, he ends up on the hill with Gregory, but like I said, that could be a dream or a heaven of sorts, or it could be years after the actual ending of the game. We can't really be certain. Or at the very least, the game could be omitting Freddy and he won't make an appearance for whatever reason, hence why the statue is destroyed. I mean, like, look at it. This thing is in pieces, but why? There isn't much rubble around it, and the escalator walls are way less damaged than this, so why would the statue have been so heavily damaged if there was nothing that actually hit it? Seems a bit sus if you ask me. And at 7, 1 year later. With the DLC not releasing until 2023, the question remains of when in the timeline it will take place. Yes, it will take place after the true ending for Security Breach, but how long after the true ending is the question. See, with the state of the animatronics, it seems that it could be later on, and the release date being 2 years after the release of the original game means that it could be linear in the timeline sense, so it could also take place 2 years after the ending. But that would then bring on the question of why is Gregory back there if it's a year or two later? But then we also have to ask who is this girl and where they came from if we're really going to know this answer. So while there are theories, this one specifically coming from Amanda because of the release date, we still don't know for sure until we have some more information. Time to wait another 6 months before another teaser! And at 6, Chica Graffiti. While zooming in on Chica, like I always do, I did notice that her torso seems to have traces of red on it. Now, what this is in reality is definitely unclear, but it could be graffiti, indicating that this could be later on in the timeline. She could have been decommissioned for a while after being revived for whatever purpose, and maybe some kids got to her and decided to spray paint her. Or, more likely, it's actually pizza sauce. See, brightening the image while basic FNAF at this point is also still helpful, and I used it in the last Ruins video. However, while the red is evident on the normal poster, by brightening you can actually see that there is yellow dripping from Chica's face. And unless Chica started listening to Bear Grylls in order to survive the collapse of the Pizzaplex, I'm pretty sure that it's melted cheese dripping from her mouth, which would also explain the red in tandem. I mean, it could be her beak, but like we were trying to explain the red, so cheese makes sense. Like I said, it would mean that the red stuff would then be pizza sauce and potentially pepperoni or some other form of meat that the Pizzaplex kitchen would add on pizza. But it could also be blood. Not sure from who, but maybe Chica saved Vanny's life or something. Also, I was at Niagara Comic-Con 2 days ago, and there was a girl dressed as Chica. Didn't know who I was. It was kind of offensive. It was really humbling. Halfway through, into number 5, the FNAF ARG. This was brought up in a recent MatPat FNAF theory, and people are starting to suggest that it's going to be involved in this DLC. The basic idea that the FNAF Fazbear Frights books were originally going to have an ARG that Scott ended up cutting out for whatever reason, and then released part of it in the Felix the Shark book 12. However, I'm here to tell you guys that it's not real, okay? Scott has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to cross the line between fact and fiction, and that he wants to keep the two worlds separate, probably because FNAF relates so closely to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's also why he wouldn't really make a real FNAF location, okay? He stuck to this so hard that he didn't even make a website for the indie game dev introduced in FNAF VR like he wanted to, because he thought that it would be too fuzzy for the line, okay? So, look. There is no FNAF ARG, okay? If a website is too much, there is no bigger quest here. Last time we thought this, there was a restaurant that got harassed, and a pizzeria owner who just so happened to be named Mike also got harassed. So please, don't go out searching. If there was an ARG, I'm sure Scott would have said something about it, okay? So don't harass anyone, just stick to the games and the game files. Crack open FNAF 3's mobile game if you want to see if there's the image there. Just leave the real world locations and people alone. And at 4, simulation. It's also worth mentioning that there are multiple instances on the poster that feel unfinished. Now, I don't know if this was because the poster was rushed, which has seemingly been a trend with FNAF recently, or because they're simply mistakes, but I wanted to point out in case it has bigger implications. Like when I mentioned the last time we talked about this, the floor at the bottom actually cuts off, but the rocks on top of the floor don't. Mostly because at this point the ground without brightening had mostly faded into black, but the rock was still kind of visible. However, even unbrightened, you can see the clear divide between the tile and just pure black. You can also see that on the left, the floor does the same. And this is very clear in the original poster, okay? I mean, like, there's even a glowing rock sitting at the border. Oh, it's like glowing because it has reflecting light on it, but it also kind of reminds me of when an item is important, so it's highlighted in the game even if it makes it unrealistic. But the most interesting part in my eyes is the tree on the far right. The one in the back next to the escalator. The bottom 2 sections of it are blank, like they're just filled in with a black outline and then solid brown color. Like the artist had finished the color blocking and then forgot to finish the tree despite doing the rest of that tree. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but if it is, then could this be pointing to the entire thing being a simulation? Which would then bring up the question of how and who. Like maybe this is what Vanny is seeing in her head while Glitch Trap was taken over, so that she's still like the good guy in her head, so she's not fighting back against Glitch Trap's control. Or maybe it's Gregory still caught in his dream that started in 1983. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Prisoner. Now time to get to some theories about our blondie in the middle. Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention that she looked an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who ended up going missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that point. So the most realistic answer I have is that the missing children weren't actually dead, but they were rather trapped inside the building somewhere. Much like how Vanny in the very first trailer for the game said, "Gregory, your friends are here with me."
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory must have known these children, right? Which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, this is a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who, thanks to the collapse of the Pizzaplex, managed to escape containment. But ultimately, in at number 2, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, this one is a bit wild, but hear me out. I also mentioned last time how both of these kids look like Aftons. Gregory is very clearly meant to at least be an allegory for crying child, okay? The stripes on the shirt, the age, the relationship with Freddy, it was right there in our faces. Whether you believe he is a robot or not, he is at least meant to represent crying child. And now, look at this girl. While she may be in black and white, she is still very clearly blonde. She has pigtails like Baby does, and we all know who Elizabeth ends up possessing. She's wearing a skirt exactly like Elizabeth was wearing in the one time we see her in Sister Location. I mean, if crying child's 2 stripes are enough for a comparison, I I think this is more than enough. And then look at her shoes. The lights are the only thing that has color on them, which is very clearly meant to have our attention. And then those lights are purple and red. Purple very clearly representing William Afton, and while last time I said that the red could be Vanny, Baby is absolutely covered in red, from the clothes to her hair. Red is all over that animatronic. Or it could be that this girl is evil, just like how Elizabeth always wants to impress her father. Just saying. It's not the craziest thing this series would have done. Okay, it would have been, okay, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Or again, they could have just been taken because they look like the kids. And finally, in at number 1, time travel. This one is crazy, I will admit, and it's most definitely not the case, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book called Into the Pit. Remember that one? Where Oswald ends up jumping into a ball pit and somehow leaving 2011 and appearing in 1985 to witness the missing children's incident? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason. And where do we see the first ball pit that wasn't in a pizzeria that was simply meant to lure animatronics around? Oh, would you look at that? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying that time travel has already been established, and considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future or something. There are actually 2 key indicators that point in this direction, at least in my mind. The therapy disc where the therapist calls client 46 out on the lies about their home life, and the fact that when he leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. The therapist in the tape says that 46, which I'm still certain is Gregory, has a great home life, but what they told their previous therapist was a lie. But if that is the case and his home life is great, despite saying his parents and him suffered some form of tragedy, how is it that he sleeps in a cardboard box? Like, his home life is great, but he sleeps in a box. Because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened as of when the game takes place, which would mean that this girl could be Gregory's sister who came back to save him when he didn't return. Or he could be lying and instead using the name of someone he knows is a missing child in the future, which is why he can't go home. Or why the therapist describes him as writing down his past as if it was a story. Because it is a story, just not his. Firstly, let's go over a theory that I've been seeing that I wanted to stop in its tracks. I mean, it's probably not gonna happen, because this video is probably gonna get like 6,000 views max, but either way, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who goes on to possess Chica. Susie has been dead for a long time once the game takes place, being dead for over 50 years or so. So there is literally no possible way that this girl could be Susie. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released her spirit in the Happiest Day minigame, and she has only possessed Chica as far as we've known. Some assume that the Happiest Day minigame takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true. Considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that when FNAF 3 is over we get the good ending, to me that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place in FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria FNAF 6 does not have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released because, well, they had already been dealt with. So about this girl, let's go over some evidence about what we see on the poster. Firstly, there is her blonde hair. We know that it's blonde thanks to the rim lighting on the character being blonde at her hair, and while yes it may seem stupid, I think that the general consensus is that this girl is blonde. While rim lighting is the color of the light that it is instead of the color of the person, it also isn't going to be yellow on a darker surface, so this means that her hair is not black, eliminating Cassidy from the race. So this is not the spirit that was possessing Golden Freddy, or who a good amount of people consider the one you should not have killed, aka the Vengeful Spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. The girl in the middle is also wearing a jacket and what appears to be a denim skirt, fingerless gloves, white socks, and sneakers that light up Skechers style. Hashtag not sponsored, but like Skechers, hit me up, we can probably work something out. Now this may not be out of the ordinary to any of you, but this instantly reminded me of someone from a previous game. As I did mention this in another video, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, I get that she's been dead for longer than Susie, but just hear me out, okay? See, when we were playing Sister Location, we ended up getting the cutscene where Elizabeth is grabbed and killed by Baby, turning Baby's eye color from blue to green. This outfit that this mysterious girl is wearing is nearly identical to the one that Elizabeth was wearing in that minigame. Aside from the light up shoes that wouldn't be available for another decade by real world standards. However, in FNAF in 1983, they also had discs that emitted sounds that altered the appearance of things in your brain. So a couple of light up shoes 10 years early doesn't really seem like that much of a stretch. The skirt is also identical to the skirt that Elizabeth wears in that cutscene, and the jacket could easily be covering up a similar styled shirt, which which could be pushing the idea that Gregory having 2 stripes on his shirt is definitely important. But I want to talk about the color. You see, there is no real color on this girl. Bumping up the saturation, brightness, or vibrance actually shows that this girl is drawn in black and white. Have you ever heard of the saying, lack of evidence is sometimes itself evidence? Like maybe you're dealing with a professional killer, or that these thieves are overly cautious. Well, I think that this is a similar situation. Think about it. Why would they draw this girl in black and white? I mean, yeah, sure, she's backlit, but being backlit doesn't make you grayscale. This is an indication that the color of this girl's clothing can possibly mean something. Maybe Scott thought that he was too subtle with Gregory, only putting 2 stripes on his shirt, so this time he went for the full outfit including color. Speaking of color, there's also the matter of her shoes, the only part of her that isn't rimlet that has color. The color of her lights being purple and red. Purple obviously being a nod to William Afton, aka the Purple Guy, a character so synonymous with purple that I can't wear my favorite shirt on this channel now without being called a serial killer. And red, while misleading, actually does tie back to Elizabeth Afton in the form of Baby. Her entire outfit was red, including her bright red hair, and I mean, like, it seems fairly reasonable to assume that this girl has at least a connection to the Afton family, although there is another explanation for the red on her shoes. Give me a minute. Given that the other 2 humans on this screen, Vanny and Gregory, are also connected to the Aftons, we can guess that this is the case with the blonde girl as well. However, I don't think that the girl herself is Elizabeth. Here's the wow moment, alright? I think that this girl is possessed by Elizabeth. Yeah, I know, right? Hear me out. I know I said that that's not possible with Susie, but that's because we freed her, alright? There are 7 faces on the Blob, the secret antagonist of Security Breach. 4 of them have lit red eyes, and 2 of them don't. The 4 that do are Naked Endo, FNAF 1 Bonnie, FNAF 1 Chica, and Mangle, all of which are somehow present in some form or another in the Pizzaplex. Mangle is Roxy, Bonnie was Bonnie, Chica was Chica, and we fight multiple Endos on multiple occasions. The 2 that aren't present, however, don't have their eyes lit up, Baby and the puppet. But we know that fire doesn't do anything to Remnant, clearly. I mean, Afton has burned, what, 3 times now, and none have stuck? And in another video, we determined that the spirits can only be freed when they get their unfinished business resolved, like the missing children in Happiest Day. Baby also doesn't seem too happy about burning in FNAF 6. She in fact says that she wants to make her daddy proud, and dying to fire would really do the opposite considering how many he's survived. So, much like we suspect Michael could have, Elizabeth could have swapped bodies as well, into one of the missing children that Vanny took. Hell, that could have been why Vanny took them in the first place. Afton wanted his daughter to have a vessel, hence why this one looks so much like Elizabeth's original body. This also explains why there is red on her shoes, because it's meant to represent the glowing red eyes that would be in the animatronic head. Remember, it's damn hard to kill an Afton for good, and in the books, Baby is really the one orchestrating everything, at least when it comes to the Afton amalgamation. Especially since this girl is facing away, her eyes could also be green, and I have a feeling that throughout the game we will see her eyes either flip-flop or start off blue and become green or something like that. Or, what I think would be the coolest way to do this would be having her eyes green normally, like if we see it in like a camera or something, but be blue in a mirror. So, here's how I think the story went. After the FNAF 6 fire, William gets a hold of Vanny in order to get his body back. He creates, through the company, a new location on top of the old one to hide his deeds, and then he sets himself free. In the process, though, he notices that his daughter's spirit is also stuck. Since this is the first time they've been together since he put her in the basement of sister location, he decides to help her out, and causes Vanny to start abducting kids who look like his in an effort to rebuild his former family. Given that his youngest son is either still possessing him or now loose to the elements as well, the blonde girl is then kidnapped and Elizabeth finds her suitable host, so she's possessed. And now she follows Vanessa around in an effort to keep an eye on her and remind her that Afton is always watching. She starts manipulating her through encoded chats and messages, and hacks the FNAF AR animatronics to cause them to malfunction, and gets Vanessa promoted to security guard to keep an even closer eye on her. As a part of her observations, she starts therapy just like Vanessa does, and despite her telling the truth about her family history, it doesn't line up with the girl that she's possessed. Hence the one therapist calling out Client 46 for it, and her explanation about what happened to her family seeming to lack emotion, since after all, she watched it happen as Baby instead of experiencing it as an actual child. After the collapse, she is either brought back by Afton requesting help with himself, or possibly also to help secure the vessel for Crying Child, who escaped along with a Michael-possessed Glamrock Freddy. To me, this seems like a game about reuniting. Reuniting with lost brothers, lost hope, but most of all, reuniting a family. the Afton family. After all, we have all the characters now. The misguided father whose misdeeds cost him everything, his loyal daughter who wants to see her family back, the mother who now agrees and is a part of the father's plan, even if unwillingly so, and the sons, one too scared to do anything, and the older brother who helps him beat the circle that their father created, who rights their wrongs and makes up for their family's sins. What do you think? I feel like I'm pretty spot on with this one, and that this could be a great launching point for the next part of the series, but let me know what you think down below.